Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Revisiting Disney. This is the series in which you, the subscriber, pick an attraction, and I play Imagineer for a day and talk about what I would do to sort of revisit that attraction and sort of redesign it a little bit. Not necessarily meaning I want to change the attraction, but it's a cool, fun, creative exercise that I love doing. And today, you all have picked another classic. You guys like throwing the classics my way because they're super tough. They make it much harder for me to decide what to do. And of course, we're in Tomorrowland at the famous Space Mountain. One of those attractions, I think, so famous that people who don't even go to Disney know about it, right? It's like Splash Mountain and Space Mountain. It's just one of those things. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to revisit Space Mountain. Now, before I do, I kind of want to talk about where I was with this revisiting and sort of the thought process I went through, because I found it to be very, very difficult. And not just because it's a classic ride. It is a classic ride. I find those to be harder to do because you want to be careful with it, right? And of course, I'm not an actual Imagineer. I'm not actually changing anything. So I could say, well, just, knock it over and put a whole new thing there. But, that I would love to think of something that's a little more realistic that does give proper reverence to the actual real ride and still, seems like a change that might be like something that could happen. With Space Mountain, it was interesting because I feel like Space Mountain has so many iconic parts about them that shouldn't be changed that it became very hard to think of what could be changed. Now, for one, it is an indoor roller coaster. I think it should stay an indoor roller coaster. I think to take that roller coaster aspect out of the attraction and put something else in there is just to completely change the ride altogether. And then at that point, you're not revisiting Space Mountain. You're just, making a new ride that happens to take up the same space. Similarly, I think like this exterior is just so not just iconic, but it's so beautiful. Like, it is perfect. It is the perfect exterior facade for an attraction. I mean, let me get a better look at it here. I would not change this one bit. And I don't just mean that because I don't want to see it change, but I can't think of anything that I think would be cooler than that. That's the coolest thing I could think of. And I didn't even think of it. I just grew up with it. But there is plenty that I do think can change, and that's what we're going to talk about. Now, because of those things, it's not a very crazy revisiting where it's just like a total change. I will throw this out there. If we were going to play the game of like tying it into a movie or something, I think this would be cool for a really sweet Guardians of the Galaxy roller coaster. I'm just throwing it out there. That's not my idea this week, but just putting that out there. I actually prefer the original sort of concepts that aren't tied in directly to an IP. Now, I think to talk about my idea, you kind of need to get a basic understanding of Tomorrowland. Tomorrowland was originally a part of the park that Walt Disney and Disneyland wanted to be a celebration of the future, of what was to come, what we could accomplish, and what mankind might see throughout the lifetime. This is the one person who knew that I wasn't going all the way down there. Of course, quickly, our actual technological progress outpaced what Disney could create. And so rather than trying to keep up constantly, Disney sort of adopted this new concept for Tomorrowland, which is a celebration of what we used to think the world of tomorrow would be like. It was sort of a celebration of retro futurism and, sort of Jetson style. This could be the future. We look at it with fondness because maybe part of us wishes that's how it turned out, or maybe we, get a good laugh out of how off we were or thought it was. But that's sort of what Tomorrowland has become, and I think this ride as an extension of that should reflect that. And so I think it would be really cool if the interior style continued to reflect this sort of, retro futuristic Jetson style aesthetic, right? I would say let's replace the roller coaster cars, but don't completely redesign them into something modern or flashy. Keep that same retro Jetson style, but give it a fresh new redesign. Give it some new technological features. For one, I think something that they did with Rock and Roller Coaster that was unbelievably fantastic, that should be in every roller coaster ever, forever, is speakers like right next to your ears blasting great music. I think music is one of those few like sensory experiences that has the power to evoke the same sort of excitement that a roller coaster can evoke. And I think it'd be great to get like a really great score. The Space Mountain in Disneyland has a score by Michael, I can't say his last name for the life of me, but he's the composer for things like The Incredibles and Mission Impossible. He's did Star Trek. I'm not even going to try. Out of safety of not offending people with my horrible Italian pronunciations, I'll just call him Michael G. But, you know, they have a score there. I think getting a new, fresh score for the Disney World version would be really, really cool. And I think blasting it in your ears through like a cool rocket that isn't, you know, super futuristic looking, but is still like retro looking, Jetson style would be really cool. I think another thing they need to do, and I guess since we're here, we could talk about it here, is a complete redesign of the queue. Now that seems kind of crazy because they just sort of updated the queue with all these interactive elements that here on MC Magic are represented by these little light up blocks. And I think the interactivity is cool, but the part I'm thinking of specifically is these parts here, right? When you walk through the queue, you see these sort of like psychedelic, trippy looks at galaxies and star clusters through the window, and they get all warpy. And they're very rudimentary when it comes to the effects employed there. It's just sort of like mirrors and bending of, you know, light to create these little warpy effects. But I think why not, rather than just do these secluded long distance galaxies that seem so empty and vast, do something more compact, something more exciting. How about a retro futuristic skyline, something similar to, I keep going back to the Jetsons, but I think that aesthetic is perfect. Or if you want to stick within the Disney lore, the aesthetic used at the end of Spaceship Earth, right? That's sort of old school style animated world where everything's flying around and people have flying cars. Imagine walking through this hallway, because the idea is, right, you are at a starport and you're going to get on a rocket ship to go somewhere. So where are starports? I would assume the same place airports are, and where are airports? In big cities, right? So if you're walking through here looking out the windows, instead of seeing galaxies or like these, you know, static images of space, seeing a very animated and very colorful and vivid and stylized skyline of this futuristic city with like cars flying by and, you know, all this fun stuff happening. I think that's the most exciting aspect to it that got me onto the idea, is the idea that if you have it animated, right, and you have it as like a screen projecting this onto another screen so it's animated, you could put all sorts of fun little gags in there, a lot of fun animation gags of things going on. So when you're standing there in line, yeah, some people will be playing with these little animated games here, but then people could also just look out the window and be entertained because something's going on. It's almost like a miniature, you know, cartoon taking place in one spot. And, you know, it changes from window to window. So it's maybe you even have like a little story that's playing out from window to window. So I think the queue would be a great way to start like a revisiting for this, or a revamp for this ride. You could also, you know, really amp up the setting around it, so it's not just like this empty hallway, but it feels more like a starport would, or I guess like an airport would, where you have maybe announcements going on over the loudspeaker, the way an airport will have announcements for boardings, things like that. Just, you know, really amp it up so you feel like you're at an airport in the future. And then, you know, you get to the ride, and we'll go ahead and do a little flying to get to the ride. Let's see if we could hop on. And you get in this new designed spaceship that, you know, still has that old retro feel, but is new and fresh, and it's a new take on the attraction. You've got music blaring in your ears, not very something you'd expect on a flight, but ice cream. But something that, you know, would make the ride super exciting. And then to revamp the inside, I think what they really need to do is kick up their game with projection mapping technology. Now, if you don't know what projection mapping technology is, it's when you project an image onto an object that is three-dimensional to make it look like something's happening to that object. In the Disney world, this is commonly used at Cinderella's castle. They project it so it looks like the castle's, you know, changing or freezing. They do this a lot in shows. You see this outside of Disney a lot too, where they'll project an image of the building onto a building and make it look like, you know, it's crumbling or vines are growing on it or whatever it is. It's the idea, it makes it look like that thing's actually happening to the object. That technology is getting so much better with each year that I think they should employ more of it in the ride itself being projected onto the walls. Now, a little piece of Space Mountain history: the reason it looks the way it does with all of those I-beams on the exterior is because they intentionally wanted the support beams to be outside of the structure so that the walls inside the ride would be perfectly smooth. And the reason they wanted that was so that they could project asteroids and stars and stuff on the wall without it looking weird, because everything is all blocky and deformed by all these beams and supports. So, they literally designed the ride around this effect. And I think it's only fitting that if you were to redesign the ride, I forgot how dark it is in MC Magic, it would only be fitting to really take this effect to the next level. So much of this attraction has support beams anyway, because this isn't a floating roller coaster. But I feel like with projection mapping technology, you'd have better chances of being able to project objects, not so that it highlights these support beams and these steel frames for the roller coaster, but it makes them blend away. So by having a distorted spaceship that perfectly fits on the wall and the supports of the roller coaster, it would to your eye look like a normal spaceship. And I think you kick it up and you make make an adventure out of it. Make spaceships flying around you and buzzing past you. Make it feel like it's sort of a crazy flight to another land. Something to sort of add another layer of entertainment, because it's hard to innovate on a roller coaster. A roller coaster's main thrill is the physical thrill of being thrown around and tossed around and looping around. So there's not a whole lot you could do. You can't really set up a story or have scenes play out, but you could have cool effects. I mean, you see it in the old Space Mountain with these tunnels that you go through. Why not put that to the next level by projecting all this cool stuff? So it's not just, stars and asteroids. I think that's the biggest takeaway, if I had to sum up how I wanted to revisit this, is that Space Mountain is a very secluded experience in many ways. Aside from the fact that you're sitting alone, there's nobody next to you in the Walt Disney World version. Everything feels like you're just in the middle of nowhere. It's asteroids and stars, but no cities, no civilizations. And I think it would be a lot of fun to add all of that stuff to make it feel more alive. And then finally, I think you should, obviously revamp these sort of scenes that you go past. I think one way I would change it, the original concept was it was sponsored by, I believe it was FedEx. So it was all about all the places in the galaxy that FedEx will deliver to. And so you have all these little scenes of all these far out places. But I think if you're going to keep within the theme of a starport or an airport, why not do all these far out places in the galaxy you can vacation at, and make them all tropical or spin-offs off of where we would vacation. You could even throw in, for fourth wall effect, throw in a Disneyland in space or something. I think that'd be a lot of fun. And then finally, although it's most minor part of it, maybe a little revamp here to the post-show area. I do like that they have some arcade games and stuff, but I feel like there's never been anything inherent in the design of the post-show area of Space Mountain that makes me want to stick around. And I feel like that's what Disney would want you to do on some level, is stick around, right? Because they want you to eventually buy something. So I don't know, something you could do there. I think having a little section of faux touristy gifts from all of those far out galactic places you'd vacation would be really funny, or just things like that. So that's a very long-winded way as to how I would revamp Space Mountain. It is a classic. It was very tough for me. I would say this is actually the most difficult attraction for me to revisit, because there's so much I wanted to keep the same. But I feel like a revamp like that would be different and new enough that it would feel fresh. It would, be a shot in the arm to the attraction, yet enough of the iconic aspects of the ride would remain that it wouldn't feel like you're gutting a classic, and it would stay true to what the ride was meant to be. Anyway, I want to thank you for sticking along for that longer than usual version of the episode. I want to thank you for the suggestion. If you like this idea, if you hate this idea, if you have an idea for an attraction you want me to revisit, leave it in the comments below. I love to hear what you guys think, whether it's, that's a great idea, Rob, boost my ego. Or, I hate that idea, this is what I would do. I love to hear other people's ideas. Throw them down there. Have a great week. Whatever you're doing, make the most of it. It makes it that much better. And if you want more episodes, all you have to do is hit that subscribe button. And I've got plenty of Disney content coming your way. Thanks for watching, everybody, and I'll see you next time. Bye.